Okay, I'll call the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee to order. Just as a reminder to committee members, we're doing nominations today. So the procedure is going to be a little bit different. We don't have Lindsay here because she's not involved in the nomination process. But she will be here after the nominations to do some language reviews. So please don't run away after the nomination. And as I've said in the past, the nomination process is very statutorily driven. So there's certain things we have to go through in this process because of the balance between the Senate and the House. So this is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purposes of considering the nomination of the governor by the governor of Andrew Butcher of Portland for reappointment as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the laws and rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold a public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by a majority vote of committee members present and voting. As chairs of the committee, we will then send written notice of the committee's recommendations to the president of the Senate. So I just realized I didn't give a chance for people to introduce themselves. So why don't I start over on my left with Representative Runte.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Runte, and I represent parts of the towns of Wells and York, as well as the town of Algonquin.
Good afternoon. I represent District 42, Representative Valley Geiger, representing the city of Rockland, most of the town of Owl's Head, and the islands of North Haven, Cree Haven, the Muscle Ridge, and somebody else. Matinicus. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Steve Foster, representing District 32, which includes the towns of Dexter, Garland, Charleston, Stetson, Exeter, and a part of Bradford.
Hi, I'm Chris Kessler. I represent part of South Portland and a smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Melanie Sachs, proud to be the House Chair and to represent the wonderful community of Freeport and House District 102.
Good afternoon, Nicole Grahowski. I represent Senate District 7, 22 communities in Hancock and Knox counties.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophie Warren, and I'm fortunate to represent the small but mighty portion of Scarborough in the main house.
Good afternoon. My name is Reagan Paul. I represent House District 37 in Waldo County.
Good afternoon. My name is Kilton Webb, and I represent House District 98.
Howdy, Nate Wadsworth. I represent House District 82, home of the world's greatest fair.
And I am State Senator Mark Lawrence. I represent Southern York County, which are the towns of South Berwick, Elliott, Kittery, York, and Agunquit. And since everybody's bragging, I represent Duck Island, Eastern Island, Shag Island, Mingo Island, Southwest Ledge, Smutty Nose Island, Cedar Island, and Appledore Island, which includes Babs Rock. Thank you.
Oh, don't get me going.
Okay, so we'll go back to our procedure on nominations. The committee will hear testimony from and have opportunity to question the governor or her representative, the nomination, and other persons present who wish to speak for or against the nomination. Persons testifying at the public hearing today are advised that the hearing is live streamed and may be seen and heard by persons watching online and the millions of our fans around the world, and that a recording of this meeting will be archived. Chair will recognize the representative from Freeport for the purposes of making a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. Andrew Butcher of Portland for reappointment as the President, Maine Connectivity Authority.
A copy of the statutory requirements for this position are at the rostrum. The chair now recognizes the representative of the governor's office for the purposes of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Good afternoon. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Mike Duguay. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, and I'm extremely pleased to be here on behalf of the Governor in support of Andrew Butcher's nomination for reappointment as President of the Maine Connectivity Authority. The Maine Connectivity Authority is charged, as you may know, with achieving universal availability of high-speed broadband in Maine, was proposed by Governor Mills and created through bipartisan legislation, which passed unanimously and signed into law in 2021. By law, the president of the authority is recommended by the board, then on to the governor and confirmed by the legislature to serve a four-year term. During the search for the original first president, as Andrew is, to lead this entity, the search committee received resumes from all across the country, from some extremely talented people that were interested in leading the MCA. And Andrew Butcher stood out as a candidate uniquely qualified to lead this effort. He previously served as the director of the Maine Broadband Coalition and as the director of innovation and resilience for the Greater Portland Council of Governments, or GPCOG as we call it, which gave him extensive experience in broadband expansion and deployment. As director of the Broadband Coalition, an organization that represents and advocates for businesses, communities, and internet users to secure affordable and equitable access to broadband connectivity, he co-led the successful effort to pass Governor Mills' 2020 bond proposal, providing $15 million to expand broadband here in Maine. He also partnered with the Maine Technology Institute, the Connect Maine Authority, and the Maine Community Foundation to oversee data collection to support broadband deployment in the state. As Director of Innovation and Resilience at GPCOG, Andrew worked on the agency's lending programs, sustainability, resilience, and broadband initiatives. During his time at MCA, Andrew Butcher has shown remarkable dedication to broadband deployment and development here in Maine, as they improved or established connectivity for over 135,000 homes and businesses, leveraging nearly $300 million in state and federal funding. On behalf of the governor, I urge you to support his reappointment as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The chair would ask if any member of the committee has questions for the commissioner at this time. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Before I recognize Mr. Butcher for the purposes of making a statement, I just want to remind members of the audience that you may not regularly testify at our committee hearings. We do have sign-up sheets, and they are over there on the ledge. Please do not jump out. They are over there on the ledge, so if you could sign that up so I will know who wants to testify. The chair now recognizes Mr. Andrew Butcher for the purposes of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Hi, friends. My apologies, a printer did not work this morning, but I will send my testimony and I will provide a printed copy at your convenience. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, distinguished members of the Energy, Utilities, Technology Committee. My name is Andrew Butcher and I serve as president for the Maine Connectivity Authority since 2022. And I stand here before you grateful and humbled by the opportunity to continue my service. I appreciate and respect the workload of this committee, so I will keep my remarks brief, as I hope that the copious data and reports that we've previously shared demonstrate MCA's progress, impact, and momentum, and reflect my motivation, commitment, and fidelity for this position. So with that, last night, I went for a walk through the snow, through the snowy roads of my neighborhood, and was alone in the quiet. No children, no dog, no podcasts, no mandatory call to my mother. I was alone with the sound of snow falling. With the moon peeking out behind the clouds and the snow-covered pines, it was a brilliant moment of solitude in Maine. I love this place, and there is no better way to enjoy being alone than the reassurance that within a moment I can be connected to anyone and anything that I want to. The balance of solitude and connectivity reflect the challenges of human condition, our social contract, and the rapid evolution of technology in our day-to-day lives. It is this contrast that pulls us together with an almost inevitable gravity and requires us to remember our humanity. I zoom out here because I think that sometimes we forget the fundamental complexity associated with expanding our technological reach to be connected so that we can have the choice to be alone. Choice is the operative concept here. To have the ability to choose what to do with our time, our skills, our relationships, our aspirations, and money is the new foundation of our civil society. For the last 6 years, 4 of which with MCA, time flies when we're having fun, I've been reinforcing this foundation so that people who didn't have a choice before can get one, so that those who have choices can exercise them simultaneously, advancing their own prospects as well as our collective community. The joy of this effort has been the ability to work with thousands of people across hundreds of companies, communities, organizations, and institutions who share in the commitment to become more connected. To lead a team that is ready to meet the moment of this historical consequence is nothing short of an honor. In 4 years, we have started this agency from scratch, invested hundreds of millions of dollars to ensure everyone in Maine has the choice and agency to connect in our digital society. We've braided technologies, blended funding sources, and bundled place-based assets with people-centered policy. There is no single solution for how to expand our digital infrastructure and maximize the benefit for people who will use it. There are, however, a series of options that require a comprehensive view and capability to make the most of our options. We are looking beyond the binary of do you have an internet connection or not, and towards a future where the choice of connectivity is the primary utility that enables our social cohesion. And it is in this spirit that I request your support to continue my service as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority.
Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Butcher? Representative Kessler.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the poetry. I really do. I had a question about what you think the priorities of the Maine Connectivity Authority should be moving forward, and you just alluded to that a little bit. I was wondering if you could just expand upon that and let us know what specific goals and priorities you will have.
Absolutely. So since day one, thank you for your question, Representative. MCA has established a set of mission critical activities and strategic imperatives every 6 months that is staff developed and board reviewed. This makes response to your question very easy in that right now the top 3 strategic imperatives for us are truly to be able to execute and implement the BEAD program, which, as you know, is a large federal infrastructure investment program with multiple hoops and hurdles that we have collectively jumped through, but is critical to the ability to facilitate remaining infrastructure investments to the remaining 21,000 and change unserved locations in the state. Now, that's imperative number 1. Imperative number 2 is also to be able to finish the implementation, the design and construction of a new federally and state-funded high-speed middle-mile network known as the Maine Open Optical Statewide Enabling Network, which will be a critical asset that is owned by MCA as an entity and serves as a key function to enabling choice and, in particular, ensuring public benefit for that middle-mile network. And strategic imperative number 3, as we've spent a good amount of time talking about this session, is in fact to put forward a plan of statutory consolidation and strategic vision for the future. We've made tremendous progress in the last 4 years, and we all have, there's a tremendous amount of work in progress and there's a significant amount of work to be done. That vision for connectivity needs to pair with a statutory consolidation plan for MCA and Connect Maine. Those 3 priorities represent the first top 3 of many, of which include continuing to execute and manage over 110 different grants that are in motion through different funding sources with a variety of companies and partners. I'll pause there. I'm happy to drill into any one as you'd like.
Any other questions from the nominee? Representative McIntyre and then Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just two questions, if I may. The printer challenges, is that a wired or a wireless printer?
It's a great question. It's a user error and ink cartridge purchase problem.
Thank you. Thank you. The second question piggybacks on my colleagues, Representative Kessler. I like to try to pick your brain in terms of future vision. Right now, there's a lot of things going on. You know, one of the hot topics right now is data processing centers. You're in charge of trying to help set and achieve a mission for connectivity. As we advance in society towards a much more robust digital component, the Internet of Things, all of these topics. Paint me a vision of how you see these things connecting in the future and somewhat of a timeline. That's what I'd like to hear from you.
Thank you, Representative. Can we go back to the printer question? No, honestly, though, I do, I thank you for that because I think I have a couple different viewpoints. And just to be fair, timeline is one where I'm probably not well equipped to speak to in detail right now. However, what I will say is that as we become increasingly connected, the supportive infrastructure, be it large data centers or distributed data centers or co-location facilities, are going to be an increasingly key part of how our infrastructure operates. And what we've already learned over the course of the last couple of years, and really, I would say most acutely the last year or so, is that these development opportunities are manifesting quickly and at a significant level that require transcending any one domain of subject matter. So while there may be an opportunity to provide a fiber network to a data center that is looking to develop in an old mill right now, it is really a matter of how the energy use of that particular facility couples with the large-scale energy use throughout the region, which then informs a land use plan, which informs how local community is engaged. And what I've come to realize and been appreciative of my discussion with other agencies and colleagues is that this is, like any other large development, a need and an opportunity to facilitate interagency collaboration so that we are able to reflect back to the private sector what our protocol and roadmap is. And because of the long-term high impact implications of the development, we need to be diligent in that process. And I think we've had elements of that collaboration taking shape organically. And I think that the opportunity to further codify that is timely. And so I think to your question as to vision, I'll just boil it down based upon what we've learned so far and what I see emerging, is that Maine geographically is a region that could make sense for expanded data center development of multiple scales. However, any development of any scale, what I have learned, whether it is in reclaiming vacant land in Pittsburgh or expanding high-speed internet in Maine, requires a authentic and ongoing engagement process with local communities and a intergovernmental coordination that enables one step to lead to another. And so I think the vision for interagency collaboration is essential in finding the right fit and right approach, combined with supporting the industries that want to invest in Maine's infrastructure to understand how best to interface with communities, because it is very understandable that communities are scared of the implications of data centers. Big buildings that serve as a proxy for AI that is coming for our energy and our jobs is a very understandable thing to be fearful of. However, not all things are what we fear they will be. And if we can help engage with communities and ensure that development happens in a way that suits the place-based needs, then we have a harmony of business. And I think that is an opportunity for us to build upon an existing strong track record in the state around infrastructure and industry development. So from a timeline standpoint, like I said, that's a hard one. And I guess I would welcome the opportunity I can drill in further if you'd like. However, I'm also happy to follow up in future conversation if you'd like.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A two-part question. First part, I think you probably answered this when you appeared before us 2 or 3 weeks ago. What percentage of the residents of Maine are now connected?
Are now connected? 100% of residents in Maine of locations that are serviceable with federal funding that are reflective of locations that exist on a map have an option to connect to the internet.
So you don't have a number who actually have made that last step?
What I can share is that, the map is not necessarily static. There are, as of our most recent calculation earlier this year, approximately 632,000 broadband serviceable locations in the state. What I can tell you is that 135,000 of them have been funded and connected over the last 4 years. And well over 200,000 are already connected and with service. The remaining locations, for example, the 21,000 unserved BEAD eligible locations are slated for funding, and all of those locations that don't have any kind of service have the ability to utilize a service made available through the Connectivity Authority while the development and build out for BEAD is happening.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Butcher. So some of us, very few of us probably sitting here or out there, remember the day when, my first family PC, I think it was $2.75 for dial-up a month. We've come a long way, baby. My question is, serious one. When you look forward, and I'm assuming that Connect Maine Authority is looking out there at the landscape and the citizens of Maine, the ratepayers of Maine, what do you see as far as in regards to affordability on what percentage of those people who are connected are going to need some form of financial assistance to stay connected?
It's a great question. Thank you, Representative. A couple ways of answering it. Yeah, you may recall that there was a program available called the Affordable Connectivity Program, made available with subsidies through the Federal Communications Commission. In working with partners to help connect, to help make that subsidy available to consumers, there are approximately 40% of the 632,000 locations that would have been eligible to utilize that subsidy. Over the course of a 6-month push to get people utilizing that service before the subsidy expired, we saw growth go from about 30,000 consumers to over 90,000 in a 6-month period. And again, that represented, I think it was about 96,000 who were utilizing of a roughly 240,000 consumers that would have been eligible for that subsidy, which provided about $30 a month off of their home internet service. What I think that data tells us is that there's a huge gap in people's ability to afford internet, and we have less resources to be able to address that. However, we also know that where there are a diversity of options, and that's not just high-speed home internet, it's also the ability to utilize a mobile service and cellular plan. Where there are a combination of both multiple providers and multiple services that enable choice, market conditions have the ability to at least constrain escalated price growth. We also are very fortunate that our relationships, we are a small, as folks know, we are a small town. And the providers that work in state have a very clear commitment to investing in communities because it is their market. The work that the Broadband Coalition has done is market aggregation. Community planning is a way in which you bundle consumers together to bring forward a clear market to a service provider. And so service providers, I think we have not seen a price escalation in communities where there's a singular provider, the way in which other states have. So I think that all of that combines to how we continue to maintain a status quo. That said, prices continue to increase across the board, and how we intervene with affordability measures is going to be a key part of a vision for the future that we will be cultivating through our planning and engagement process this year.
Other questions? Representative Warren.
Thank you so much. I wanted to harken back a little bit to some work that the committee had done. I think it was last year around net neutrality, and ask a little bit your perspective around the relationship between supporting industry, but also considering anti-monopolistic practices and practices that maybe can cause main consumers to lose out. How do you balance those things? And going forward, what are things maybe top of mind to you in balancing those concerns?
Thank you, Representative. Great question. And the question of net neutrality policy is one that very honestly is very tricky for us as an agency, in part because I think the intentions of the policy are to ensure that there are not, as you said, monopolistic practices. And I think often the thing that comes to mind when people talk about that is really sort of throttling a provider, sort of saying, well, you don't use our platform, so we're going to not enable your performance of your service. And, you know, I think that while that is a fair concern, and certainly one that seems even increasingly possible in the future, from an agency standpoint, it's one where our hands are a little tied. I think really the key issue that our testimony and involvement with that legislation entailed was really a lack of ability of our state to enforce the conditions, and effectively, in part because it is not an issue that is limited to state boundaries. And so given the current federal policy around net neutrality, there's really not a meaningful ability for MCA or even the state to impose the requirements set forward in the legislation, which makes it tricky because it's hard to set forward policy that we don't have the ability to enforce. And so I will also say, much like affordability, the work of MCA is very much navigating a changing landscape while also trying to get big things done. For example, the BEAD program, as you may recall, was restructured in June of 2025. And in September of 2025, a new rule was put in place that limited any state affordability provisions to limit perceived rate regulation, and put penalties in place for any states that were exercising net neutrality not consistent with the federal definition. So again, that represents a set of parameters that really ties our hands.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will now take comments from persons attending this hearing who wish to speak for or against this nomination. Anyone who has a written statement but who does not wish to speak should have submitted the statement with the committee clerk prior to today's hearings. All such statements shall contain the name and residence of the person who prepared the statement. A copy of each written statement presented to this committee at this hearing will be made available to the nominee prior to the committee's vote, and the nominee will have an opportunity to respond to the written comment. Those who wish to speak should observe the following rules. Please sign in on the testimony sign-in sheet at the podium. Do we have one? Okay, over there on the ledge. Please speak from the rostrum and state your name, place of residence prior to presenting your testimony. Persons participating electronically will be called upon by the chairs, at which time they will be promoted to panelist status in Zoom and can be seen and heard. Only comments concerning the suitability of this particular nominee for this particular position will be considered in order. All other comments will be considered out of order. Please remain at the podium after you complete your statement so that members of the committee may have an opportunity to ask questions. First, is there anyone present in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of the nomination? I have an Andrew. I can't read your last name, or whoever signed up. I think it's, oh, Andrew, you signed up. Do you wish to speak in favor of this nomination? I'm just kidding.
We all.
Is anyone else in the audience interested in speaking in favor? We have 4 people online. We have 1 person online who wishes to speak in favor of this nomination, Sarah Davis of Raymond. If you could transport her over, Lynn, that would be great. So Sarah, if you could turn on your video and your microphone, that would be great.
There we go.
Super. Did you hear my introduction on testimony? So
I did.
just state your name and your residence and go ahead.
Yes, sir. So Chairman Lawrence and Chair Sachs, members of the Energy, Utility, and Technology Committee, my name is Sarah Davis. I'm a resident of Raymond, Maine, and I'm the Vice President of Market Development at Fidium Fiber. I'm here today to offer testimony in support of Andrew Buscher being reappointed President of the Maine Connectivity Authority, hereinafter the MCA. Fidium has had the opportunity to partner with the MCA on numerous projects throughout its tenure. These broadband expansion projects have led to over 100,000 Mainers having access to high-quality fiber optic broadband service in the state of Maine. This work has leveraged hundreds of millions of dollars in private investment from my company alone. The MCA has brought together towns, counties, economic development organizations, and thousands of regular citizens that have volunteered on broadband committees with the goal of improving broadband service in their community. The impact of this work is immeasurable. It was not very long ago that vast amount of this committee's time was spent working on ways to improve broadband access. And now, through the leadership of Andrew, that infrastructure problem has been solved. Andrew's leadership has allowed Maine to become a broadband solutions leader nationally. Under Mr. Butcher's leadership, the MCA has navigated big challenges such as state and local fiscal recovery funding, capital projects funding, NTIA BIP funding, and now BEAD funding. Mr. Butcher has had to navigate changing administrations and with it changes to rules and regulations. Just this summer, the state had to redo its entire BEAD program on a 90-day clock. That was not an easy task, and the MCA did it and did it well. For all these reasons, I support the reappointment of Mr. Butcher as president of the MCA and implore the committee to do the same. The infrastructure finish line is in sight. With the completion of the 4-year BEAD program, changing leadership now would not be in anyone's best interest, most of all the remaining citizens that still lack high-quality broadband access. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Ms. Davis? Seeing none, thank you very much for testifying.
Thank you.
We don't have anybody else online, correct, Lynn? Nobody else in the audience. So I will move to anyone who wishes to speak against the nomination. We don't have anybody online. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak against the nomination? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak neither for nor against the nomination? Okay, all public comments having been taken, the committee will now proceed as follows. We'll review any written additional comments on the nomination that have been received by the committee. We will vote on the nomination and notify the President of the Senate pursuant to Title III MRSA Section 157 and the joint rules. That vote must be taken within 35 days from the governor's written notice. I'll declare that the hearing on the Joint Standing Committee for Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. Butcher of Portland for reappointment to the Maine President of the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with the law, the committee may not take the vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes, excuse me, after I close the public hearing, unless all committee members who are present are in agreement to waive that rule. At this time, therefore, I'll inquire whether any member present objects to taking the vote immediately. You do?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we'd like to take that break.
Okay.
before voting.
So we'll break for 15 minutes. We'll be back at, by that clock, 2:37. The pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 103rd, 132nd Maine Legislature that the nomination of Mr. Andrew Butcher of Portland for reappointment as the President of the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157, and with the joint rules of the 132nd Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending the confirmation. A vote of no will be against the motion to recommend confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? The committee clerk will call the roll.
We'll begin with Representative Runte.
Yes.
Representative Runte votes yes. Representative McIntyre.
Yes.
Representative McIntyre votes yes. Representative Geiger.
Yes.
Representative Geiger votes yes. Representative Foster.
No.
Representative Foster votes no. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler votes yes. Representative Sachs.
Yes.
Representative Sachs votes yes. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence votes yes. Senator Grohowski.
Yes.
Senator Grohowski votes yes. Senator Harrington is absent. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Paul.
No.
Representative Paul votes no. Representative Webb.
Yes.
Representative Webb votes yes, and Representative Wadsworth.
No.
Representative Wadsworth votes no.
9 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative, 3 in the negative, and 1 member being absent. It is the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. Andrew Butcher of Portland for reappointment as the President of the Maine Connectivity Authority is confirmed. Congratulations. You'll have that time to walk around if you want to congratulate them, or wait until after all the nominations. Thank you all. Wait till after all the nominations. Okay, we are now in a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purposes of considering the nomination by the governor of Mr. Michael Reed of Palermo for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the law and the rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by a majority vote of the committee members present and voting. As chairs of the committee, we will then send written notice of the committee's recommendation to the President of the Senate. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity to question the governor or her representative, the nominee, and other persons present who wish to speak for or against this nomination. Persons testifying at the public hearing today are advised that the hearing is being live streamed and may be seen and heard by persons watching online, and that a recording of the meeting will be archived. Pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statutes, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes Representative Sachs for the purposes of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. Michael Reed of Palermo for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
And a reminder, a copy of the statutory requirements for this position is available at the rostrum. The chair now recognizes the Commissioner of DECD for the purposes of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Thank you. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Mike Duguay. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, and I am pleased to be here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the reappointment of Michael Reed of Palermo, Maine, to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Michael Reed of Palermo has more than 50 years of business experience in multiple states, much of it related to telecommunications and broadband service. He's a self-employed technology consultant, provides consultant service for a Maine company called Mission Broadband, where he consults with towns and other entities in multiple states, aiding them in providing and improving broadband in their areas. He also acts as the Executive Vice President of the Technology Association of New England. Mr. Reed has provided testimony to regulatory agencies in multiple states, as well as the Federal Communications Commission, and has worked on complex state legislative affairs. In addition, Mr. Reed's experience includes network operations, outside plant operations, large project management, community and public relations. Michael Reed's extensive experience in telecommunications and broadband service has made him an excellent addition to the Maine Connectivity Authority, and I urge you to support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for the commissioner from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. The chair will now recognize Mr. Michael Reed for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination. And he is online.
I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, Mr. Reed. If you just tell us your name, where you're from, and please don't disclose the location you're calling from, because we may get very jealous.
I pretty much guarantee that. Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, members of the Joint Standing Energy Utility and Technology Committee. My name is Michael Reed. I'm a resident of Palermo, Maine, and I am virtually here today from an undisclosed location. I just wanted to provide a little background regarding why I believe I've been reappointed for this position to the Maine Connectivity Authority. I want to say I am really honored to be renominated to assist and help Andrew and the team finish our mission. We're almost there. We're almost there. I don't want to repeat what Commissioner Duguay said. I've got over 50 years. Frankly, telecom is all I've ever done for work. Right now, I'm semi-retired. I'm a consultant. I do want to correct a little bit of what Commissioner said. I am no longer affiliated with Mission Broadband. I have not been for a couple of years. I'm still in the consulting work. I am still consulting with and acting as the Executive Vice President for the Technology Association of New England. One thing I do want to mention in the technology, the consulting role, I have assisted companies, ISPs, if you will, municipalities, community utility districts in some states, electric cooperatives who wanted to get into the broadband business along with their energy production, and states, helping them with broadband strategy and how to expand. As I said, I'm semi-retired. That's my current location. I just want to say I'm honored and proud to have been a board member of MCA since inception. It's amazing what the MCA team has done. They have met or exceeded all their goals. I do want to point out, Andrew shared in his testimony earlier some of the amazing amounts of capital that have been expended. It's a team effort. The MCA is able to help with state and federal funding, and the providers in this state have been very generous in matching their share. And the end result is what we're seeing. We're almost there. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Are there questions from the committee for Mr. Reed? Seeing none, thank you very much. The chair will now take comments from persons attending the hearing who wish to speak for or against the nomination. Anyone who has a written statement but who does not wish to speak should have submitted the statement to the committee clerk prior to today's hearing. All such statements shall contain the name and residence of the person who prepared the statement. A copy of each written statement presented to the committee at this hearing will be made available to the nominee prior to the committee's vote, and the nominee will have an opportunity to respond. Those who wish to speak should observe the following. Please sign in at the rostrum. Please speak from the rostrum and state your name and place of residence prior to presenting your testimony. Persons participating electronically will be called upon by the chairs, at which time they will be promoted to panelist status in Zoom and can be seen and heard. Only comments concerning the suitability of this particular nominee for this particular position will be considered in order. All other comments will be considered out of order. Please remain at the podium after you complete your statement so that members of the committee may have an opportunity to ask you questions. First, let me ask if there's anybody present who wishes to speak in favor of this nomination. Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this nomination? Seeing none, is there anybody who wishes to speak on this nomination? Seeing none, all public comments having been taken, the chair will now proceed as follows. The committee will review any written comments on the nomination that have been received. We will vote on the nomination, and then Chair Sachs and I will notify the President of the Senate pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Joint Rules. This vote must be taken within 35 days from the date of the governor's written notice. The hearing on the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. Michael Reed of Palermo for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with the law, the committee may not take the vote on this nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing unless all committee members who are present agree. At this time, therefore, the chair will inquire whether there is any member present who objects to proceeding immediately to the vote. Seeing no objection, the pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 132nd Maine Legislature that the nomination of Palermo for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. A vote of yes will be in favor of the recommendation. A vote of no will be against the recommendation. Is the committee ready for the question? The committee clerk will call the roll.
We'll begin this time with Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth votes yes. Representative Webb.
Yes.
Representative Webb votes yes. Representative Paul.
Yes.
Representative Paul votes yes. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Senator Harrington.
Yes.
Senator Harrington votes yes. Senator Grohosky.
Yes.
Senator Grohosky votes yes. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence votes yes. Representative Sachs.
Yes.
Representative Sachs votes yes. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler votes yes. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster votes yes. Representative Geiger.
Yes.
Representative Geiger votes yes. Representative McIntyre.
Yes.
Representative McIntyre votes yes. And Representative Runte.
Yes.
Representative Runte votes yes.
13 members having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative. It's the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. Michael Reed of Palermo for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. I want to congratulate you, Mr. Reed, and one of the keys to your being confirmed is that you didn't release your location.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll go on to the next nomination. This is a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purpose of considering the nomination by the governor of Ms. Danielle Lauder of Cornville for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the law and joint rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold this public hearing and to recommend the confirmation or denial of the nominee by a majority vote of committee members present and voting. As chairs of the committee, we will then send a written notice of the committee's recommendations to the President of the Senate. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity to question the governor or her representative, the nominee, and any other persons present who wish to speak for or against the nomination. Persons testifying at the public hearing today are advised that the hearing is live streamed and may be seen and heard by persons watching online, and that a recording of the meeting will be archived. Pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statute, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes co-chair Representative Sachs for the purposes of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Ms. Danielle Louder of Cornville for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
I move that I'm sorry, that's your part.
I did that part.
Thank you. A copy of the statutory requirements for this position is available at the rostrum. The chair now recognizes the Commissioner Duguay for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Thank you. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Mike Duguay. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, and I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the Governor to speak in support of the reappointment of Danielle Louder of Cornville to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Danielle Louder of Cornville is a graduate of the University of Maine with a degree in biology and has completed graduate work in public health at the University of New England. She serves as the co-director of MCD Global Health's domestic division and is responsible for maintenance and growth of the public health portfolio, identifying opportunities for funding, developing new initiatives, and facilitating collaboration with other organizations locally, regionally, and nationally. She's also responsible for expanding the range of public health programs with an emphasis on bridging population health and primary care, as well as initiatives deploying technology to enhance health promotion and disease prevention. Ms. Louder's experience working across multiple sectors, including health systems and public and community health, as well as with content expertise in telehealth, technology, and cardiovascular health, diabetes, and worksite health and wellness. She also serves as the program director for the Northeast Telehealth Research Center, where she leads efforts on the implementation and growth of telehealth programs throughout the Northeast. In addition to a professional career, she spent most of her life in rural Maine and understands the need for and the challenges in obtaining accessible internet. Danielle Louder's extensive public health and telehealth experience have made her an excellent addition to the Maine Community Authority. And on behalf of the Governor, I urge you to support her nomination. Thank you.
Are there questions for the Commissioner from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes Ms. Danielle Louder for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and members, esteemed members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, many thanks for the opportunity to be with you here today. My name, as mentioned, is Danielle Louder. I am from Cornville. It's right next to Skowhegan. Everybody always asks me that question, so we'll just get it right out of the way. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you regarding my renomination to the Maine Connectivity Authority, where I would continue to serve as a representative with expertise in telehealth, expanding to digital health, AI, lots of things in the evolving landscape. I've worked in Maine's telehealth landscape for nearly 20 years and have served as director of the Northeast Telehealth Resource Center since 2014. Through this program and in my role as director of U.S. programs at MCD Global, I support telehealth planning, implementation, and evaluation across Maine and the broader region. This has included leadership of the Maine Telehealth and Telemonitoring Advisory Group and close collaboration with hundreds of healthcare organizations with a shared commitment to improving access and outcomes for rural and underserved communities. In my NATRIC role, as we lovingly refer to the Northeast Telehealth Resource Center, a little bit rolls off the tongue a little easier, I work with health systems, rural hospitals and clinics, healthcare providers, educators, community organizations, policymakers, and state agencies to strengthen digital health capacity for all. Our work includes advancing innovative models like Project Echo, helping organizations address critical issues such as workforce shortages through telehealth, and supporting many Maine-based partners in securing federal and foundation funding for broadband and digital health initiatives. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Netric helped thousands of providers stand up telehealth services quickly, overnight in some instances, to maintain access to medical, behavioral health, and substance use disorder care. The crisis also made clear that the digital divide, particularly for rural and underserved Mainers, creates real barriers to accessing essential services. Ensuring an universal, equitable broadband access and digital inclusion is central to Maine's preparedness and long-term health. As a lifelong Mainer who's lived and worked across rural parts of the state, I understand firsthand the importance of reliable connectivity to residents, communities, and businesses. I was never so excited when fiber came to Cornville. Broadband is foundational not only for health, but for education, economic development, and overall quality of life. I'm proud of the progress the Maine Connectivity Authority has made and remain deeply committed to its mission of expanding accessible, affordable broadband for all Mainers. I would be honored to continue contributing to this important work. Many thanks again for your time and consideration.
Are there questions from the committee for Ms. Louder? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, and congratulations on your reappointment, Ms. Louder. So initially, when you were first appointed to the board, you may recall, I think it was by Zoom, our conversation
It sure
regarding,
was.
regarding the fact that, and I'm familiar with Cornville, my brother-in-law and his wife and family built a home there, so in the woods. But I think you'll probably recall, I mentioned that you just being a bit above Colby College are the most northern representative
Yes.
on the board for the rest of Maine. And I think you're well aware of what's going on with our hospitals in that part of the state. I'm wondering if you might just touch on Maine Connectivity Authority's mission and work and how that relates to maybe helping to assist those health facilities going forward that are above Cornville and North. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I used to work with Sharon for several years. Great to see you.
Can you stay after the hearing and tell us?
We can
these
catch up,
stories?
yes. So Maine Connectivity Authority, obviously our mission is equitable and affordable connectivity for all. I know folks may have seen, but Andrew did a statewide tour over the summer, and the projects that we have implemented through the connectivity hubs in northern Maine, in some of our most rural western parts of the state have really been incredible. And we have continued that work. So we had some funding that was specifically committed to creating formal connectivity hubs, but we continue through my role both with the Maine Connectivity Authority as well as with the Northeast Telehealth Resource Center to ensure that rural and underserved communities are well represented. I take a very nothing about us without us approach to everything that we do, not only with my role with MCA, but also with the Northeast Telehealth Resource Center. So ensuring that we are reaching out and getting the input from rural constituents in our projects and our program development and evaluation of our reach is critical. And that's really why we're here. Certainly we want to make sure everyone in the state, both urban and rural, but it's more difficult to access some of those services. So creating, even if folks don't necessarily want connectivity within their own individual home, creating those connectivity hubs, community hubs where they can go and access not only just telehealth, obviously that's my passion, digital health, but for economic development, for education, for just socialization. Social isolation, particularly for older adults in rural areas, is an incredible challenge. And it really decreases longevity and health, and the not being able to access key services, whether it's healthcare or education or social opportunities, is very detrimental. And we want to make sure that our folks living in rural areas have just as much opportunity, that their lifespans are just as long. And it shouldn't matter if you choose to live and recreate and work in a rural area. So it's a critical aspect of everything that we do.
Any other questions for the nominee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will now take comments from persons attending this hearing who wish to speak for or against this nomination. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the nomination? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the nomination? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the nomination? All public comments having been taken, we'll now proceed to review written comments on the nomination and to proceed with a vote on the nomination. The hearing on the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Ms. Danielle Louder of Cornville for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with the law, the committee may not take a vote on the nomination sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing unless all members who are present agree. Is there any objection to proceeding to the vote immediately? Seeing none, we'll proceed to the vote immediately. The pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend to the Senate of the 132nd Maine Legislature that the nomination of Ms. Danielle Louder of Cornville for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed in accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6, Section 157. And with the joint rules of the 132nd Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. Excuse me. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be in opposition to the confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Starting with Representative Runte.
Yes.
Representative Runte votes yes. Representative McIntyre.
Yes.
Representative McIntyre votes yes. Representative Geiger.
Yes.
Representative Geiger votes yes. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster votes yes. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler votes yes. Representative Sacks.
Yes.
Representative Sacks votes yes. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence votes yes. Senator Grohowski.
Yes.
Senator Grohowski votes yes. Senator Harrington.
Yes.
Senator Harrington votes yes. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Paul.
Yes.
Representative Paul votes yes. Representative Webb.
Yes.
Representative Webb votes yes, and Representative Wadsworth is absent.
12 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, and 1 member being absent. It is the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Ms. Danielle Louder of Cornville for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. Congratulations. We'll now proceed to a public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purposes of considering the nomination by the governor of Ms. Hannah Carter of Orono for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the laws and the joint rule of the legislature, the committee is required to hold this public hearing to either confirm or deny the nominee by a majority vote of the committee members present and voting. The committee will hear testimony from and have an opportunity for the governor or her representative to speak to the committee. Persons will also be allowed to testify at the hearing either for, against, or neither for nor against the nominee. Pursuant to Title III, Section 157 of the Maine statutes, which requires there be an affirmative motion to recommend committee confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes Representative Sacks for the purposes of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Ms. Hannah Carter of Orono for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
The chair now recognizes the Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development, Economic and Community Development, for the purposes of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Thank you. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sacks, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Mike Duguay, Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development. I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the reappointment of Hannah Carter of Orono to the Maine Connectivity Authority Board. Hannah Carter of Orono is a graduate of the University of Maine at Presque Isle with a BS in biology and earned an MS in extension education, along with a PhD in agricultural leadership from the University of Florida. Since 2019, Hannah has been the Dean of the University of Maine Cooperative Extension and provides leadership for the Extension's education programs and applied research. In 2022, in addition to her dean role, she assumed additional responsibilities as an associate provost for online and continuing education. And in 2025, she became the deputy provost while continuing her role as dean of cooperative extension program. Prior to returning to Maine, she spent 19 years at the University of Florida in various roles as a professor and administrator for the college. Growing up in Aroostook County gave her firsthand experience with the needs of rural communities. Now as a dean of the University of Maine Cooperative Extension, which relies heavily on online instruction, she understands the necessity of high-speed internet connectivity, which is the limiting factor to reaching more learners in all corners of our state. Hannah Carter's reappointment will retain her valuable perspective to the Maine Connectivity Authority. On behalf of the governor, I urge you to support her nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee for Commissioner Duguay? Seeing none, thank you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Hannah Carter for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Hannah Carter, and I'm the Deputy Provost and Dean of Cooperative Extension at the University of Maine. I first came before this committee in 2023 to be confirmed for my first term. At the time, I mentioned being excited about the opportunity to serve as I believed in the goals of the authority. That belief has only been solidified as I have learned from the dedicated staff from the MCA, my colleagues on the board, and from the people who have directly benefited from the work that the authority has accomplished so far. In my previous hearing, I also mentioned that I was one of the thousands of Mainers without an adequate internet connection, and I live 4 miles from the campus in Orono. I'm happy to report now that that has changed as of December 2024. As Andrew mentioned as well, I am one of the Mainers who now has an option for reliable, affordable internet connectivity or a plan to be served. This is an awesome accomplishment, but we still have work to do. In my role at the University of Maine, I oversee everything from 4-H youth participating in online STEM skill and leadership development to master gardener trainings now offered online and contributing to meeting workforce needs in the horticulture industry, to UMaine's door opening online degree and certificate programs, as well as early college, which allows thousands of high school students to earn free college credits, often through online courses. Our ability to advance the upward mobility of more Mainers through these and other public education programs is dependent on the ability to not only connect, but also be able to navigate and utilize technology. My professional and personal life is tied to rural Maine. From growing up on a potato farm in the county to now providing leadership for our flagships, educational and outreach initiatives across the state, I know firsthand that our ability to connect, to learn, and to prosper here in Maine is dependent on our ability to reliably access the internet and utilize technology. I believe that Maine has a bright future. If reconfirmed, I look forward to working with the authority and all of you to promote further opportunities for connection, literally, to benefit our people, our schools, and our small businesses, our communities, and our beloved state. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Are there questions from the nominee? Representative Sachs?
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Runte, is that a question? Okay.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Carter. If you notice, our committee hasn't been asking many questions of nominees, and in my part, it's because I reviewed the extensive packages before we got here. I noticed yours is mostly blank. And so I am interested to know why. And specifically the question that was left blank about what experience or expertise do you feel you'd bring to this appointment?
I apologize for that. When I was instructed to complete the reconfirmation packet. They said if anything had not changed, only update the first page and the ending and the back page.
That's why I wanted to inquire to give you the opportunity to say specifically what experience or expertise do you feel you bring to this appointment?
I believe it is through, especially through the last 5 years working within the University of Maine, especially after the pandemic when we moved everything within extension online, and then assuming the additional responsibilities that I have at the University of Maine overseeing online and the ability to connect with learners all over the state and looking at what are those barriers to connections, like how, whether again, you're a 4-H'er up in Aroostook County, or you are somebody who wants to come back to the university to complete your degree, what are the barriers? And a lot of it has to do with access to, again, available technology, the ability to use that technology successfully. So it's one thing to be connected, but are we giving folks the skills that they need to utilize that technology effectively? And so the last, as I said, 5 years of my professional career has really been spent focused on connecting people to education.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I need to apologize. I just was checking, and Ms. Carter, it turns out that you live 1/2 minute north of Cornville in Orono. So really, you are our northern rep, I guess, on the board. So, and I'm greatly appreciative of the fact of where you're originally from, a native of the county. So, thank you.
Thank you very
I
much for
apologize.
acknowledging yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? For the nominee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will now take comments from persons attending this hearing who wish to speak in favor or against this nomination. First, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the nomination? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the nomination? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak on the nomination? All public comments having been taken, we will now proceed to review any written comments and then proceed to a vote. The hearing by the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Ms. Hannah Carter of Orono for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with the law, the committee cannot take a vote sooner than 15 minutes after the close of the public hearing unless all members present agree. Is there anybody who objects to taking an immediate vote? Seeing none, in accordance with, excuse me, the pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology, I'm just giving you time, Lynn.
Thank you.
Recommend to the Senate the nomination of Ms. Hannah Carter of Orono for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. In accordance with the state statute and with the rules of the legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending confirmation. A vote of no will be against recommending confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? The clerk will call the roll.
We'll begin with Representative Runte.
Yes.
Representative Runte votes yes. Representative McIntyre.
Yes.
Representative McIntyre votes yes. Representative Geiger.
Yes.
Representative Geiger votes yes. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster votes yes. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler votes yes. Representative Sachs.
Yes.
Representative Sachs votes yes. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence votes yes. Senator Grohosky.
Yes.
Senator Grohosky votes yes. Senator Harrington.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Harrington votes yes. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Paul.
Yes.
Representative Paul votes yes. Representative Webb.
Yes.
Representative Webb votes yes. And Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth votes yes.
13 members have been voting in the affirmative, none in the negative. It is a vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Ms. Hannah Carter of Orono for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is be confirmed. Congratulations. Welcome. Is this your fan you brought? So we have one more confirmation to go through. But I realized before I do that, I did not give an opportunity for Senator Harrington to introduce himself.
Good afternoon. Sorry I was late. Senator Matt Harrington. I represent 4 towns in inland New York County: Alfred, Lebanon, Sanford, and Waterboro.
Okay, we'll go on to our final public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for the purpose of considering the nomination by the governor of Mr. James Carlson of Gorham for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Under the laws and the joint rules of the legislature, this committee is required to hold a public hearing and to recommend confirmation or denial of the nominee by a majority vote of the committee members present and voting. The vote will then be confirmed with and transferred to the President of the Senate. The committee is going to hear testimony from people in opposition to the nominee, in favor of the nominee, and those neither for nor against the nominee. Pursuant to state law, which requires that there be an affirmative motion to recommend confirmation of the nominee, the chair recognizes Representative Sachs for the purposes of making such a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend confirmation of Mr. James Carlson of Gorham for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority.
Reminder that a copy of the statutory requirements of the position are available at the rostrum. The chair now recognizes Commissioner Duguay for the purpose of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Thank you. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Mike Duguay, Commissioner of the Department of Economic and Community Development, and I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the governor to speak in support of the reappointment of James A. Carlson of Gorham, Maine, to the Maine Connectivity Authority. James A. Carlson of Gorham is a graduate of Gordon College with a degree in economics and earned his MBA from the University of Connecticut. Now retired, but in a disclosed location, I might add. He's had a long and varied business career that has served him well on the authority, including roles as an auditor at Sachs, Dunn, McNeil, and Parker in Portland, 18 years of chief financial officer of Saco River Telephone and Telegraph Company, and 15 years as vice president and chief operating officer of Unitel Incorporated, headquartered in Unity, Maine. While at Unitil, he was responsible for strategic planning, including daily operations of a rural telecommunications carrier and broadband affiliate, Unicap, and managing the deployment of its fiber networks in central Maine, as well as monitoring the operational, fiscal, and strategic performance of all facilities-based networks. James Carlson's extensive experience has made him a valuable member of the Maine Connectivity Authority as they have evaluated proposals for long-term network investment and cost-effective broadband solutions. On behalf of Governor Mills, I urge you to support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the governor's representative from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
The chair now recognizes Mr. James Carlson for the purposes of making a statement concerning this nomination.
Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is James Carlson. I'm here today to discuss with you my nomination for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. Since 2023, I've been a member of the MCA. Currently, I serve as treasurer of the authority. I sit on the authority's infrastructure, audit and risk, and executive committees. Prior to joining the authority, it has been my good fortune of managing successful telecommunications networks for nearly 40 years. Much of my career has been focused on rural Maine, where the challenges of sparse population have limited deployment of state-of-the-art broadband service. In 2022, I retired as Unitel's Chief Operating Officer. As its COO for nearly 15 years, I oversaw the financing, construction, and operation of its fiber to the premise broadband network that serves rural communities in Waldo and Knox counties. For nearly 18 years prior to that, prior to Unitel, I served as the Chief Financial Officer at Saco River Tel, headquartered in northern York County. In that capacity, I oversaw the construction and financial performance of its voice, cable television, cellular, and ISP operations. I'm a certified public accountant. I hold a Master's of Business Administration degree from the University of Connecticut, a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from Gordon College, and am a proud graduate of Easton High School in Aroostook County. A lifelong resident of Maine, I was born and raised in central Aroostook County, and after completing graduate work, I returned to Maine to pursue a career in accounting and telecommunications management. I believe Maine continues to have a unique opportunity and role to bridge the broadband gap that remains between those who have access to broadband and those who do not. Significant progress has been made in closing that gap. With access to promised federal funding, I believe the Maine Connectivity Authority will continue to play a significant role in making broadband accessible to all Maine citizens. I am honored to be nominated for reappointment by Governor Mills for this position. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from the committee for the nominee? Yes, Representative Warren.
Thank you so much for being here. And I feel I've got to ask a little bit. My mom, she worked in telecom for her whole career in Maine. And so I think she would really appreciate maybe asking a little bit. She's always amazed in the last couple of years how the conversation around broadband has changed and that we're in the place we're at. And it really can't be understated. We'll just be at Thanksgiving and she'll just casually bring up that she's amazed that we're having the type of conversation we're having now. And so I guess I just put it to you. It sounds like you've also been in telecommunications for your whole career and in Maine. And just, could you speak at all to that? Just maybe to back up something my mom was talking about, but what kind of conversation are you having now versus maybe what you thought was possible for your career?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. I guess I could talk for a long time about that, but I promise I won't. I don't think when I entered public accounting or telecommunications, I had any idea where we would be presently that was clearly above my pay grade at the time. But I started in the landline business back in 1980 at the cusp of divestiture of the Bell system, breakup of the Bell system. And so I can speak firsthand about, the toll business that, everybody was familiar with at the time. Now I think that business is gone, and that's a good thing. I was at the beginning of the cellular revolution, I guess, a wireless revolution. We were the company I worked for at the time. Star Cellular was one of the first to go online in New York and Stratford County, New Hampshire. But even that industry has changed dramatically from, installed phones in cars to suitcase phones to pocket phones. So, I won't go on. But anyway, thanks for the question. That's great.
Any other questions for the nominee from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now go to persons who wish to testify either in favor or against this nomination. First, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the nomination? Seeing none, is there anyone present who wishes to speak against the nomination? Lastly, is there anyone present who wishes to speak on the nomination? Seeing none, all public comments having been taken, the committee will proceed to review written comments and then proceed with a vote. The hearing by the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology for Mr. James Carlson of Gorham for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority is closed. In accordance with state law, we cannot take a vote sooner than 15 minutes unless we have unanimous consent to the committee. Is there anyone who objects to taking a vote immediately? Seeing none, the pending question before the committee is that the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology recommend the nomination of Mr. James Carlson of Gorham to the Maine Senate for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority. In accordance with 3 MRSA Chapter 6 and with the joint rules of the 132nd Legislature, the vote will be taken by the yeas and nays. A vote of yes will be in favor of recommending the nomination, the confirmation. A vote of no will be against recommending the confirmation. Is the committee ready for the question? The clerk will open the vote.
Beginning with Representative Wadsworth.
Yes.
Representative Wadsworth votes yes. Representative Webb.
Yes.
Representative Webb votes yes. Representative Paul.
Yes.
Representative Paul votes yes. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Senator Harrington.
Yes.
Senator Harrington votes yes. Senator Grohosky.
Yes.
Senator Grohosky votes yes. Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence votes yes. Representative Sacks.
Yes.
Representative Sacks votes yes. Representative Kessler.
Yes.
Representative Kessler votes yes. Representative Foster.
Yes.
Representative Foster votes yes. Representative Geiger.
Yes.
Representative Geiger votes yes. Representative McIntyre.
Yes.
Representative McIntyre votes yes, and Representative Runte.
Yes.
Representative Runte votes yes.
13 members of the committee having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative. It's the vote of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology that the nomination of Mr. James Carlson of Gorham for reappointment to the Maine Connectivity Authority be confirmed. Congratulations. So if you want to take a moment to congratulate the nominees, we're going to be taking a short break for Lindsay to get here. She has some language reviews, and I think we're going to take down the podium in the interim. So feel free to walk about the cabin. Okay, I'll call the committee meeting back to order. We're going to do a couple of language reviews.
Excellent. All right, so I'll ask Lynn to help me out. But before we get started on the language reviews where you have packets, which Lynn will be distributing, I did have a question on the minority report for LD 32. And I figured I would just sort of put this out orally, but if you'd like me to bring paperwork to the next meeting, I'm happy to do so. So LD 32, this was a divided ought to pass as amended report. You conducted final language review the other day, but the revisor's office caught a cross-reference that needed to be, there's no handout for this, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I can bring back a handout for it, but I wanted to sort of explain what the issue is. So for those folks on the minority report, so this would be Senator Harrington, Representative Foster, Representative McIntyre, Representative Paul, and Representative Wadsworth. So that ought to pass as amended report was basically to take the language from LD 515 and bring that forward. The revisor's office caught that there was an additional section of law that was added to Maine revised statutes that I didn't catch. So you saw the final language in the last review, they found it. So the additional section of law, and the question would be, do you want to repeal it or amend it? I will say most of the changes that are in the minority report as a result of LD 515 are repealing the subsequently enacted laws. So we're going back to like March 2017 in terms of the rulemaking by the PUC under 3209A. But in the meantime, the legislature enacted 3209F, establishing the Net Energy Billing Cost Stabilization Fund. So you may remember that bill. It establishes this fund that will receive federal funds, appropriations, any other funds, basically to offset costs incurred by net energy billing. So the question would be for those on the report, did you want to repeal that section of law, much like the other sections, sort of the subsequent actions? After 2017, did you want to repeal this or did you want to maintain it and amend it? And you're welcome to think about this if you'd like, and we can also chat about it tomorrow. I know in the abstract, it's a lot.
Do you need a caucus, Steve?
No, I don't need a caucus yet. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Lindsay, which one of those is the least amount of work for you?
Repealing it.
Let's do that.
Is that the agreement of all the people on the minority? I see Senator Harrington shaking his head.
We'll get back to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you do need a caucus. Okay.
I can bring this back for you all tomorrow. That's no problem. Okay, you don't want papers? Okay, well, we can revisit this tomorrow then. All right. Now time for the good stuff. You have your language review packets in front of you. Is the first one in the pile 2140? Excellent. Okay. So this is the final language for a resolve to establish a demand response program to lower electric bills and improve grid reliability. You had already seen the final language, but you had not seen the fiscal note. So if you turn the page, you will see the fiscal note from Efficiency Maine Trust. But I also want to flag Senator Grochowski caught a oversight in the movement from what you voted on to this version for those on the majority report. So I flagged it for you. That is part of the program. The trust shall develop an outreach and education campaign to increase participation in the state's transmission and distribution utilities. Opt-in time of use rates. It originally said and encourage shifting. It was supposed to say to, so that change has been made. So for those on the majority report, do you have any questions for me?
Does that look fine to everybody? And Senator Grochowski gets the Nerd of the Day award.
Might have been somebody else.
Wicked shot. Yeah. Okay, we can go on to the next one.
Excellent. That will be reported out. Next up is LD 2112. So this is an act to authorize municipalities to form community choice aggregation programs to procure electricity. There were only a few things I wanted to flag for you. I don't view these changes as substantive, but they are different. So I want to flag on page 3. That paragraph there was rephrased. This relates to the customer notice that's provided. So the notice required by the subsection must be provided to each default service customer prior to the time the customer is initially enrolled in the Community Choice Aggregation Program and must be sent in accordance with timeframes established by the PUC by rule. So I think that's consistent with the timing elements. The revisor's office flagged it as something that needed to be clarified in terms of sort of the sequence. So that was one change. We're also specifying, if you look at the bottom of page 3, anywhere we mentioned a utility administered program with reference to section 3214, subsection 2A, recommended changing it to a rearage management program, because that's exactly what that subsection of law addresses. And the only other thing was on page 5. So this gets at the PUC rulemaking regarding the types of data, the customer-specific data that must be provided by the investor-owned transmission and distribution utility. You'll note that I circled, this was an addition that was made during the editing process. I caught it this morning. I think it would make sense to take this out, but I figured I'd bring this back to you to take a look at. So the commission, this says the commission shall establish by rule a list of the customer-specific data that must be provided by an investor-owned utility, which must include but is not limited to. And then we've got the list. I feel like by specifying a list that actually limits the PUC's rulemaking, so with those on the majority report, with your permission, I would just strike that and leave it as it was, so we wouldn't say a list. Okay, I'm getting some nods. Perfect. So with those changes, and you've got the fiscal note at the back. So for those on the ought to pass as amended report, does this look good otherwise with that change to strike a list?
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
Great.
And last one, LD 1966. I was hoping to bring this back in pink copy. For those on the majority report, this is ought to pass as amended, ought not to pass. But as you may recall, you've seen this a few times, and the sort of open question related to section 4 of the amendment regarding disclosure of costs on utility bills. At the last work session, there was a fair amount of discussion about what the intent of the majority was. And so I worked with Senator Grahowski and Representative Warren on this. And so the language has been revised to state that if an investor-owned transmission and distribution utility does not include all expenses that may be recovered in rates in a customer's delivery cost, the PUC rules must prohibit the utility from labeling such expenses or any combination thereof as, quote, public policy charges or a substantially similar term on customer bills. The rules must require an investor-owned transmission and distribution utility to label such expenses or combination of expenses on customer bills in a way that the commission determines is objective and assists customers in understanding these expenses. So that gets at the labeling as public policy charges. Then the sort of second component of this would require the commission shall also require, to the extent practicable without incurring additional costs for ratepayers, an investor-owned transmission and distribution utility to include a brief objective description of each of the expenses that may be recovered in rates paid by the customer, or to include a link to the utility's publicly accessible website where a customer may obtain an objective description of such expenses. And then we define expenses that may be recovered in rates. So those are other than charges for supply, delivery, and transmission, and we provide some examples. So I think here we're getting at specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent was to prohibit the public policy label, require a brief objective description, but also the goal was not to require the investor-owned T&Ds to do significant billing changes. I think the goal was to not incur costs for ratepayers and just making sure that this information is provided, or at least there's a link to the website. So I do want to flag, however, for the committee, this prohibiting the utility from saying public policy charges. It is possible this could be subject to a First Amendment challenge. I tried to find some case law to see, sort of how this might play out, or at least some sort of indication of what test would be applied. Needless to say, I could not find anything on point. So just wanted to raise that for you.
How does everybody in the majority feel about this? You're fine with it? Representative Kessler?
Just for clarification on section 4, the way that the first sentence reads, I don't have it up on my screen, but is that because it's continuing a sentence from previously? Okay.
Correct. The way that it's worded is essentially the PUC adopting rules. And so that's why, like I can't remember what the lead in is, but that's why it's sort of, if a T&D does these things, essentially the rules must prohibit the utility from labeling.
Okay.
That's why it's structured that way.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else? Acceptable to the majority? Okay. You're all set? Is that it for language reviews?
Sadly, that is it for today. The pink copies will be reported out except for LD 32 minority report. We'll touch base on that tomorrow. In an ideal world, I would bring back 1966 tomorrow in final form so you can all see it. Don't know if that's going to happen, which means that we will be doing a little bit of language review by email if we end up in that position. So I talked to the chairs. And I think at this point, what the plan would be is I would email, and you guys have been through this before, I would email out the final language for review, giving you a window of time, likely less than 2 days to respond. I will just be sending it to the committee members. I will not be distributing this publicly. You can take a look at it, flag any edits for me, in which case we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. But then once it's reported out of committee, it will be posted on the website.
Anything else? Are we set to adjourn? We are adjourned.